Hey there viewers, and welcome back to the Self-Made Auto channel. So we got us an 05 Honda Accord here. It's the 3-liter. It's the big V6 and it's got a stick in it. So this thing's got to be pretty fun to drive, but right now it is sick and that's why it's here. So the car has a continuing problem of a flashing check engine light when it's at an idle. You drive the car down the road, it drives fine. The customer's pretty, aware of this, and I guess it's been happening for some time now. He's taken the initiative to do, some diagnostic work himself, and he knows he has a cylinder or cylinders with low compression. Apparently, if I remember correctly, he's gone through and, checked the basics, including a compression check. What else? A valve adjustment apparently had been done. So we know that's good. So it kind of narrowed down our diagnostic process a little bit, but again, we're going to look at it like it's a brand new car. It's broke. We're going to fix it. A brand new car to us, anyhow. I can tell you when I started it on the parking lot to bring it in, it does sound like a cylinder with low compression, particularly when you crank it over. It's got a pretty distinct sound. So we'll grab a scan tool. We'll see which cylinders are having the problem. I'll let you guys listen to it while we crank it. I'm pretty sure you guys will be able to hear it. Let all the beeping get done here, and we'll see if we can't put it. Wow, shoot, you know what? These don't have clear flood mode. We'll just start it. Probably hard to tell in the video. You hear that one cylinder as it goes by, kind of freewheels a little bit there. But yeah, this Honda does not have clear flood mode like a lot of them don't. So we'll do a different thing. All right, so one thing we can do while we're right here, hopefully get rid of the glare for you. We can use our launch, and we're going to go into one of the special features where we can actually turn all the injectors off. So we're going to go ahead and do that. It's a little bit of a process. So once you do this on a Honda, to get the injectors to turn back on, it's not a matter it doesn't matter pushing a button, but you actually got to go through and do a PCM reset, not just a code clear. So we'll let this get done here, and this should allow us to crank it over, without going out and unplugging the coils. That way we can have a good listen to it. Alright, so all injectors are going to stop, reset ECM after this function, otherwise the engine will not start. So basically, it's all the same thing. So we're going to take, now you guys should be able to hear this. Wait for this car to come by. So you can hear that, where it's not just a very steady, repetitious crank. Another thing we can do to prove this is we could do a relative compression test just to gather some data, on a known bad engine. So why don't we just go ahead and do that just for the sake of doing it. So I'll go ahead and get our PICO Scope set up here. And now the majority of you guys that watch our channel, you've seen us do this test before, but for those of you who haven't, we're just going to be using a lab scope and just a current clamp, so it's a really non-invasive test. And the thought behind it is we're going to clamp around the battery cable that goes to the starter. We're going to be actually measuring starter current. So if you think about it, every time the piston travels up and it's compressing air, it makes that, the easiest way to think about it, it makes the starter, growing a little bit, makes a little higher amperage draw. So you're going to see these peaks as, the piston comes up and the starter draws more current. And then, naturally, as the piston's on its downward stroke and another one's up, there's going to be, these peaks and valleys for every time it comes up on a compression stroke. And theoretically, if a cylinder has low compression, it's going to have, a lower amperage draw on the starter because the starter's going to turn easier. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then we should be able to see it. And then the easiest way to tell, which cylinder is we'll put a trigger on one of the coils, assuming that the coils are firing right now. After turning the injectors off, I don't know if it shuts off the coil drivers or not. I don't believe it does, but we're going to test that out. So we'll get a trigger, and then at that point all you need to know is a firing order, and then you can lay it right over there, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm getting hooked up here. I did just get a new U-test kit from AES Wave. So I had the old kit here, and the guy that works at AES Wave swung a deal with me. He told me that they had a new kit and that he'd allow me to trade in my old kit for one of the new ones. So I know every time I've used this, a lot of you guys that are scope users have asked about it. So it's a pretty sweet kit that comes with a ton of front probes, male and female, wire piercers. One of the cool things they did a little different is their amp clamp loops. They also put a lead on it so you can do voltage and amperage at the same time, just off one connection. So that's pretty cool. That's the biggest change I see in this kit. Other than that, I think they added a new, it looks like there's one extra new set of pins there. So that's something new. So anybody interested in this, like I said, I did get this from AES Wave. I'll put a link in the description, you know, if you're interested in looking at those. But super handy kit. Anytime I'm using any test equipment, I always end up, you know, grabbing something out of here. You know, whether it's a probe or just an alligator clip. They got airbag simulators, stuff like that. So it's pretty handy. So just want to throw that out there. All right, so for our trigger, I believe he told me it was a number 5 that he had the worst trouble with. So we're just going to unplug that coil. We'll find a trigger wire on it. So all these coils will have matching wires except for one, and that's going to be our trigger. So it must be this one here, this black with a purple trace. I'll get a front probe. We can go in there. It looks like this one here. All right, so that's going to be our coil trigger. So we'll hook that to our scope. Other part of the scope's hooked to ground. We'll get our amp clamp hooked up. Looks like we've got a single wire going right to the battery. So we'll put it in a 200 amp mode, which will be fine for the cranking current. And then it's got a little direction arrow on it, shows battery positive, and then current flow going that way, which I believe they call it conventional current flow, but real current flow of electrons actually goes from negative to positive, not positive to negative. Alright, so we're good on that. Alright, we'll get our scope set up and give it a crank. Alright, so on channel 1 we have our current clamp, so we'll set that up. It's actually a PICO clamp, so we'll go right on here. So we got the 2000 current amp, 200 amp mode, and then we're going to crank this up to 200 amps. We'll leave that like that, and we'll turn channel B on. Let's see, it's already on a voltage scale, so we'll go 20 volts. I'll just we'll just put it down here for right now. We'll change our time basis here. 1 second per division, and then we'll just throw up a trigger. Put it on repeat. Bring that over here. So as soon as we start cranking, just kind of even that out. Alright, as soon as we start cranking, then it's going to start recording. So, let's see, it's playing, everything should be good. I'm going to hop in there and crank it. Alright, that should be enough data for us. That should stop right on the next screen. There we go. As long as we get a live screen, we can just pause that. We'll hop back in there. You guys can probably hear that a whole lot better out here, but we certainly can see this in our graph. Must be at a crappy ground on that. Anyhow, let's take and zoom in here. Alright, well, we can see our trigger event is good enough. Oops. Take and move this down, and it does appear that number 5, so we can overlay that. So as long as you guys can get it, so I don't know the firing order offhand without looking, but let's say, you know, let's see, it's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So let's say it's cylinder 1, cylinder 2, cylinder 3, cylinder 4, and then cylinder 5 has very low current draw. And then, you know, hypothetically, let's say it's a cylinder 6. Now you'll see that one has a much higher hump. Because this one didn't draw much current, so the crankshaft actually accelerates a little bit there, and it's going to cause a little more current draw as it comes into that next event. So this isn't uncommon to see, pretty even. Number 5 is low, and then the cylinder after the low cylinder always has a higher peak. So, but we can see that number 5 indeed is the lower contributing cylinder. I guess you have to be careful with your terminology. You don't want to say it's the low compression cylinder, because theoretically they could all be low on compression. Just relative to each other, number 5 is lower than the rest. I'm going to grab the firing order just for the heck of it. So I just went ahead, I grabbed the firing order, so it's 142536, and I just overlaid them over top of each compression stroke, so you can see that falls directly, you know, on number 5. Which was our trigger. So that's all you have to know is a trigger is number 5, and then you can just figure out the firing order from there. One, I guess, observation I will make, it's interesting that 6, 4, and 5 appear to be the lowest. Of course, we expected number 3 to be a little more elevated there. 6, 4, and 5 are all on one bank. It's on that front bank of the engine. The car does run pretty well, so that's it's kind of something to keep in the back of our mind. All right, so now we're back in the car. We're going to pop back out. We're going to have to go into ECM PCM Reset. It's going to prompt us there. So now that it's been reset, some vehicles after the ECM PCM is reset, idle may be low, erratic, so it's going to have to relearn some adaptives, but it should start now. Alright, so the engine's cold. What we can do, we can just pop in to get some data. We'll manually select them. We can look at cylinder misfires here. See who our primary offenders are. Our offender. Definitely cylinder number 5's counting up on us pretty good there. It does show some misfire counts on some other cylinders. I'll tell you what, you bring this thing just off an idle, it runs good. I mean, to me it sounds like a single cylinder misfire. Why the other counters go up, I honestly do not know. It does read, your misfire counters come off from crankshaft variation, so as far as the engine light's not on right now. But it certainly is cylinder number 5. So I was just checking out some scan data. I was looking at fuel trims and stuff here while it's sitting and idling. Bank 1 is running just about 0% correction, about a 1% correction. Bank 2, where we're having the problem though, we can see that cylinder is running rich. It's taking away about 13, 14% negative fuel trim. So that's to be expected. Bring it off an idle. Because this is a map sensor engine. Yeah, the engine light just went out too. It was flashing there. Fuel trims get a little better, but still about a 10% correction for rich condition. Perhaps that cylinder, just can't support combustion, obviously as good as the rest. So, let's just pop out and just see what temporary code is stored. I imagine a 305. Nope, 2, 4, and 5, and 6. So, and a PO 300. So pretty interesting how it's counting up misfires on those other good cylinders. So what I say that we do next, when I spoke to the customer about this, we're getting the job to fix whatever it is, regardless. I have my suspicions of a bad valve or leaking valve. So what I would want to do is I like to gather as much data as I can, particularly if we end up pulling the heads off this, let's overall health check on the engine. So what I would do, if it's at my shop, and it is, I would do, a compression check on the engine. Let's see what's what. We know number 5's not, contributing as much as the rest, but, what's going on with 4 and 6 is this whole front bank low. Are we thinking, some cam timing problem? I doubt that, simply because it runs so darn good. And I don't know for a fact if these have a cam sensor on both cams, as far as, running a cam crank correlation. I can't recall right offhand. For some reason, I think they only have one cam sensor, but I could be wrong. So anyhow, we'll take it from there. So that's what I would do. Plugs are easy enough to get on these. We'll pull out all 6 coils, pull the plugs out, get our cranking compression. We'll use the scan tool again. We'll shut off the injectors. That way there we don't have to, disable the fuel pump or something. It's easier to push a button than it is to, look for a fuse or a relay. But that would be another option to disable the fuel system. Pull the fuel pump fuse, let it die. That way there you can crank it at full throttle and get good cranking compression. But we need to get a baseline as, what the car has. So I'll go ahead and remove the coils. Now we're going to use PICO again, just because I want to gather the cranking waveforms. That'll give us our peak cranking compression. So we'll take these out, we'll pop the spark plugs out. Now, if you guys have, you know, a scope or a graphing multimeter, but you don't have a current clamp, you can still do the relative compression test just using voltage. Over on the Motor Age YouTube channel, Pete Myers, he actually did a video on that and how to do that, and he's got some pretty neat little tricks over there. So I'll just close here for it now. Grab the spark plug socket, we'll get these pulled out, pull out all 6 of them, and then we'll just zip down through the compression. We'll record all our data, you know, write it down, and kind of take our diagnosis from there. So we'll just start right here in the front, cylinder 4. Like I say, we're going to be using, because we already got the PICO out. What the heck did I do? I grabbed the wrong one. Ah, you big dummy. Round 2. There we go. Right length, wrong size. So grab this. Now this is our WPS 500. It's PICO's actual pressure transducer. And I can put links in the description for anybody who's interested in that, who perhaps owns a PICO or is considering owning one. Alright, so here we go. We're going to change our probe. Come right down here, we'll pick out WPS 500, range 1. That's where we're at. Now that's going to take us, I don't think we're going to be going over 200 psi. We'll pick the 500 psi scale just for grins and giggles here. We'll turn off our second channel because we don't need that anymore. Alright, so back in the car, I went ahead and I stopped all injector flow again. Now, you don't have to do that, but this will stop our results from being skewed. So I'm going to go ahead and just collect one, show you guys how that process is. So we're going to go wide open throttle. We're going to crank it. I got a trigger set on the screen, and we'll go, you know, 6 or 7 bumps here. Alright, so that's about 7. So we'll go out and look at the data. Let's see here, go back to frame 1. We can see our compression event. So, you know, you can see the piston travel up, and then obviously all the way back down. We're just going to collect our peak compressions right here, so we can see that cylinder is 187 pounds. There's a lot more data that can actually be gathered from these, but this is what we're after right now, and then we're going to save these waveforms in case they're going to be of any use to us a little bit later on. I'm just going to go through, save these, label the cylinders, and just do that for each one. It's pretty much the same as using a regular compression gauge. You know, you still got pretty much the same amount of work. You either got to record it, you know, you got to log it all in. So it's my habit when I'm doing this, working on a car, what I'll do is I usually just start a folder for the customer. Like, you know, I just got this label 06 accord misfired idle, and then I'll put in all my waveforms I gather. That way, if I have any questions throughout my process, like, oh my gosh, what was number 3 or what was number 1, I can't remember, it's all right here for future use. Alright, so that's all done. I can zip through these. So here, I've got my IDs. This is cylinder 1. And we can see that's 232 psi, or 223. Cylinder 2 is 206. Cylinder 3 is 218. This is cylinder 4 at 187. Cylinder 5 is at 122. And then cylinder 6 is at 180. I'm going to save all these waveforms here so I don't lose them. Alright guys, real quick, I gotta go, I gotta do, I'm sorry, I keep getting interrupted here, I gotta do some service work. So before I put the pressure transducer away, I did take some running compression waveforms. I was really hoping that I was going to be able to see something a little more than what I'm seeing. So this is cylinder number 5, which has a running compression of 82 psi, which I was kind of surprised at. I did take this right after startup, and then the engine leveled out right before I did a throttle snap. I just wanted to have this data for my own knowing. I've taken a couple classes on in-cylinder pressure transducer testing. So that is cylinder number 5. That is our low compression cylinder. This is cylinder number 1, and the running compression is exactly the same. which I would expect this one to be a little bit higher. And of course, let's see, this is cylinder 5, this is cylinder 1. I recorded this at, what the heck, this isn't showing up here. There we go. This captured, same thing, started the vehicle, let it idle smooth right before a snap throttle. So this is the same type of capture. The only thing that I notice, I don't see any valve timing issues as far as, you know, opening early, closing late. This is a little bit debatable here. Usually the bottom dead center mark will intersect this line where the exhaust valve opens. But that's, you know, kind of a general rule, and I think it's, you know, based off cam profile and stuff like that. But I did see that this one, the maximum vacuum that it went into, it did stay even in both vacuum pockets, got down to about 9 psi, 9.1. So times that by 2, so like 18, you know, 18.2 inches of vacuum. And then we go to number 5 here, and this got down to about 8.6. What, 16, 17 inches. So the amount of vacuum that this cylinder pulled into is slightly less, but it's even on both sides. And if I remember right from classes, I may be wrong on this, I'm really gonna have to look into this again, that is usually an indicator of a leaking exhaust valve. John Thornton does a fantastic class on this on AVI, if any of you guys have subscription to AVI. But as far as anything else, you know, I don't see any differences between the two, to the point I went and did an overlay. So this is an overlay, cylinder 1 over top of cylinder number 5, measured at the same point after startup here. You can see this over on my zoom view after startup before throttle snaps. And these graphs overlay absolutely perfectly. So for me, because I'm not an expert on in-cylinder pressure transducer testing, it doesn't mean a whole lot to me, and the only difference I saw was the amount of vacuum they pulled, and that was it. So like I say, if I remember correctly, that typically will, you know, a leaking exhaust valve can do that. So I say at this point, it would be the best thing to do. You know, I've gathered my data, I know the state of health of the engine. Let's focus on the cylinder number 5 and just do an old-fashioned leak down test on it and see if we can figure out where this air is going. It's one of them days where it's a straight war zone. Hey, well, I got lucky, our piston's almost the top of the center. Let's see if we can't just rotate the engine here by the power steering pulley. Usually if you go slow enough you can. Alright, so the piston's going down. I'm going to rotate the engine backwards just a little bit. We might be right at the peak. Yep. So right there is top dead center. How fortunate is that? Let me get the leak down tester. We'll put it in there. We'll see if we can tell where the air is escaping, whether it be intake or exhaust. But like I say, my limited knowledge on pressure waveforms is I believe it's going to be going out the exhaust. Not only from what I've learned, which I'm going to see if Thornton has any videos on YouTube that I can link where I think he said that, or I'm going to look back on AVI and see if I can find the video there, which is a paid service. So unless you have a subscription to AVI, you know, you can't watch it, and unfortunately, you know, it's copyrighted material, so I can't even kind of like post that clip of it legally. So I'm going to do that. And then kind of explain where we're at. I think what we're going to do, but first we need to see where's the air going. So we have the leak down tester hooked up. I'm probably going to have to hold on this wrench here by myself, so I got no help in case it's going to want to try to kick over. So I'll try to get out where you guys can see it, hopefully here, right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to put 100 psi in the cylinder. It's going to measure the pressure differential across an orifice. So far it's not pushing on me. Let me get this up to 100 psi. Let me just move that cylinder up and down. I don't have any pushback yet. very little. So right there we've got about, what, 70, if you guys can see that, about 75% blow by on that cylinder. Alright, so it is pushing, it does want to push my wrench. So I'll try to keep it there, top dead center. So now what we have to do, now that we know we have, 70% blow by, or, pressure differential, we have to see where it's going. It's either, it can be coming out, the oil cap if it's leaking past, the pistons, which I don't really hear. A lot of times the better way to do that is out the oil dipstick. Let me get you guys kind of focused in here just a little bit better. We'll set that right there. You can see it does want to push my wrench. It's trying to push that piston back down. So sometimes you pull out the oil dipstick, you'll hear it hissing there. Of course, there's other crankcase, fresh air that can be going back into the air cleaner. But usually if it's in the crankcase, you'll hear it, particularly that amount of blow by, which I don't hear whatsoever coming out of there. So the other option is intake manifold, of course, cylinder and cylinder. I don't suspect we have a head gasket here. We would have seen that. Like I said, I suspect it's going to be going out the exhaust. So I think for best visual representation, because I can't hold this and go listen to the exhaust, what we will do is what we've done in the past. We'll just hook a smoke machine to it. We know our piston's the top dead center. We'll put smoke in there instead of air, and then visually look to see where the leak is. I'll make it seem like I'm in a hurry, but I am in a little bit of a hurry. Got this stupid physical therapy crap I gotta go to. I need therapy. Physical sorts, I guess. Gotta do my special exercises to give me. Got some arthritis in my shoulders and it's messing up on my muscle in there, I guess. So I go physical therapy and they electrocute me for a while. And the smoke machine's hooked up. We've got it on at the full beam setting. Make sure we got smoke, we got plenty of smoke. So we'll put that in there. The exhaust isn't hot, so a lot of times if you're doing this and your converters are hot, it'll gobble up all that smoke out of your smoke machine. So I'll give it some time, let it kind of fill the system. We'll look in the intake. We'll look, we'll pull the oil dipstick out, we'll leave that out. If it's getting in the crankcase, naturally you'll see that coming out there. And then we'll look at the exhaust, see if we see it coming out the tailpipe. All right. Meanwhile, I want to look at one thing because I'd like to try to dispel any questions. Where's our overlay? Cylinder 1 and 5 overlay. So we got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 cranking, 1 and 5 running, relative compression. So this is our overlay. So there's going to be that question as, if this is leaking out the exhaust, intake, what have you, how do I know it's not an over-adjusted valve? Obviously we have a leak, air's going somewheres. And here's what I would say. Again, I am not an expert on in-cylinder pressure transducer testing. I know very little. However, what I do know is this is an overlay, so we're looking at good cylinder versus bad cylinder. I can bring our overlay forward. So there's our pink or magenta and our blue. So cylinder 5 is the blue. So as I look at this, if we had a over-tightened exhaust valve, or we'll just focus on the exhaust valve at this point because I'm certain that's where it's going to be going. So if we had an over-tightened exhaust valve, so our piston comes up, it's in a compression stroke, comes down into the decompression where it pulls it down below 0 psi, and at this point the exhaust valve opens. If our exhaust valve was too tight, it would open early and close late, and just in comparison between the good cylinder and the bad cylinder, we'll call it, we would see that our blue line would be over here to the left and over to the right at the exhaust valve opening event and the exhaust valve closing event. that would be noticeable. I actually have some saved waveforms where that's happened on a Subaru. I had 0 valve lash, and it was, you know, clearly noticeable on the waveform that the exhaust valve opening event was early. You could clearly see it. You know, it was far to the left, bottom dead center. So this is top dead center, 180 degrees is bottom dead center of the piston, and then the piston's traveling back up to top dead center. This is back to bottom dead center, and then top dead center again. So that's all 4 strokes right there. I do not believe that we have any valve timing issues on this engine based on what I know and what I see here, and I don't believe we have a valve adjustment problem based on what I see. So anyhow, guys, there's lots of good stuff out there. There's lots of good classes put out on in-cylinder pressure transducer testing, and it's really difficult to retain it because it's not something we see every day. It's not something you do every day. You know, you try to practice on cars that are good and collect own goods and see what good is, but when you get one that's broke, you know, I mean, obviously we could have brought this car in, misfires at number 5, done a compression check on it, did a you know, leak down test, and you know, life goes on, you're in and out, and bought your tools at Harbor Freight, which is fine, that would have worked, done it for years. But there's going to be that situation where you know, the valve cover is inaccessible to pull to physically see stuff, where an in-cylinder pressure test is going to tell us, you know, is our cam timing good? You know, perhaps what valve's leaking, you know, do we have, you know, a running compression problem, do we have a breathing problem? Let's turn the smoke machine back on. So that's why I try to use this and implement this on a car that I know is broke, because I want to know, and this is just frustrating the living crap out of me currently. So besides being, you know, busy and trying to analyze this, I'm going to take this home, study this, see if I can't get a little more. Probably going to watch some other videos on it to see, you know, if I can make sense of it. And also what I'm going to try to do, and I can't guarantee this, I'm going to take all the data that I've collected in that file for this car, and I'm going to put it on like my Google Drive, so I can put a link to that in the video description. So if you guys want to look at it and, you know, see what you see, feel free. Now you're going to say I don't have a PICO, but that doesn't matter. You go on PICO's website, you can download their software absolutely free, and then you can look at these files, manipulate them, play with them just like you have a PICO. That's the cool thing about the company. They let you try their stuff before you buy it, essentially, and it's not a trial version, it's the real deal. So I'll put a link to where you can get the software. I'll put a link to where hopefully I've been able to host all my files, that whole file on this car, so you can look at it and you know, give me your assessment. You know, what you think. We should have plenty of smoke in the system now. And then, you know, of course, I'll have links to, you know, if you want to buy a PICO, you know, I'll have the links there. And of course, that U-Test kit, AES Wave, they sell both of them, so a good place to purchase them. But anyhow, let's go see if we can find the smoke. And I don't think we have to look very hard, because there it is, coming right out the tailpipe. Yep. I don't see any, very, very little coming out around the dipstick tube, which, you know, no engine sealed 100% perfect, so, you know, the main thing is it's not pluming huge clouds of smoke. Of course, we'll take and pop off that air tube there and have a look. Toolbox to a time. There it is, you saw it. Everybody wants to see that for some reason. Whoa. Let's see. Oh, that clamp's already loose. Well, that's convenient. A little flashlight. Can you hit the throttle body? And I do not see any smoke coming out the intake. I think it's pretty definitive what we have going on here. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that for right now. It clearly is leaking out the exhaust. I gave my reason as to why I don't believe there's any need to look at valve adjustment, because I believe that I could see it. I know that I could see it because I've seen it before. So I'll leave it at that. You know, I don't see any sense in pulling the Velcro at this point. At this point, we know that cylinder has low compression. It's causing our misfire, and it's leaking out the exhaust valve. So I believe it's time to pull the head. we've gathered all the data that we could. Even based off this, judging by our in-cylinder pressure transducer test, I don't even have to check cam timing. We certainly could. These are easy enough to do. They have inspection holes on both of the covers. We can just roll it up and look. And of course, that would just mean that our pulleys are in line. Of course, you could always have it, sheared keyway and stuff like that, but I don't feel that's what we're dealing with in this case, in my opinion. So I'm going to make the call at this point. The head's got to come off. For those of you that are remotely curious about checking your timing belt timing without pulling the covers on your Hondu, you can look down at that crankshaft. Hopefully I can zoom in on this for you guys. You're going to see that little white mark on the balancer that lines up with the bottom of that triangle there in the timing cover. Now being offset here, looks like it might be a little bit off, but I can assure you it's right on. And then what you'll do, it's got to be number 1 top dead center compression stroke. And then you're going to pull your little inspection holes here on your timing covers, and you're going to look in there, and there's going to be a pointer and an indicator on the cam gear. I believe it's number 1 top dead center, but you'll see those 2 marks. They'll line up. If it's a full tooth off, you'll know it. That slight little variation there is, is nothing. That's right on. And then there's also one here in the back, which may be more difficult to see or to focus on really, because we're going to have to look down through these brake lines. Alright, so we'll see if we can find that little booger. It's going to be right through there. Of course, it's going to want to focus on the brake lines, but crap, that light's a little bit too bright. Let me just dim that down. Maybe we can see it better. So you have to look. You'll look right through this hole in the timing cover where my finger is, and you'll see the plastic little V notch that sticks up, and then you're going to see the corresponding notch there on the cam gear on the inside. So we can see, that our cam timing is right on. And if you want to check your own on your Hondu, that's how you do it. So pretty easy. So we're going to put these rubber plugs back in, and I feel confident enough to make the call to tear this little guy apart. Alright guys, so I'm going to leave it at that. I gave my reasons as to why I made the assessment that I did. Sorry if I felt rushed through this video, but it's just kind of how it worked out today. But I did want to be able to share this with you, kind of, what the process is, or the process I normally would take on a vehicle that comes in that clearly has low cylinder contribution, and some of the reasons why I do it, and my thoughts behind the data that I gather. And we're going to leave it at that. I got to take old Shiba here home. I got to go to my PT, get some electrocution and whatnot that they do to you. And like I say, I'm going to try to, look in the description box. Hopefully I can find, some info for you guys, place to put these files, links, all that business. Customer says he wants to fix it, so that's good. So obviously I've got to order all my stuff. I'm going to order, the cylinder headset, time belt, water pump, all that business. And then I'm probably going to get a couple valves just to have here on standby. So once we go to the machine shop, if we need them, then we have them. And I'm sure you guys are probably going to want me to record this process. So hopefully we can make that happen. It's going to be quite similar to the 3.5 we did. Of course, this one's a 3 liter, but very, very similar. So anyhow, that's it. I got to roll. Look at the description. While you're down there, click that subscribe button if you haven't done that. Click the bell so you get the notifications. And find us wherever you can find us. And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.